Peace, everybody. Yeah, I've been busy for the past several days. I'm finally able to finish this video series called Intelligent Action. And what I want to discuss today, I wanted to define exactly and identify different forms of action and intelligent actions. And then I want to actually uh, be more deliberate with the purpose of this discussion. The purpose of any type of intelligent action is to preserve the self, to ensure that the self will exist on this planet in the future. So everything you do should have that purpose in mind first. Then once you actually ensure and secure that you would exist in the future, then you could think about prosperity, providing institutions and structures for the future people that will be here. And part of actually ensuring that you will be alive and existing in the future, your offspring, you must identify the enemy. See, this is where intelligence comes from. We have intelligence agencies, the CIA, FBI. What they do is they identify foreign and domestic threats who pose opposition, a threat to you to existence of the United States. And they formulate strategies in order to neutralize those threats. At one point, they deemed the black people as the biggest threat to American security, national security. The Black Panthers and whatnot was seen as the biggest threat. The rise of a black messiah that could unify so-called black people. So black people is seen as the enemy of the United States of America. So that's their intelligence, conclusion. They came to this conclusion. So they must neutralize black people. They must destroy black people in order for their future prosperity. So you knowing that you've been deemed the enemy of somebody, that automatically makes them your enemy also. So we must formulate strategies to prevent our annihilation from this enemy who deemed that our annihilation is necessary. Either our annihilation or incarceration, which will ensure our annihilation, because when you're incarcerated, you won't be able to procreate. So we have to formulate intelligent strategies. So intelligent action is deliberate, planned action, a plan of action. Something that you actually use logic, reason, theory, mathematics to figure out exactly what you're going to do. You determine what the plan was. Really, you determine what the problem was. And you got to figure out the solution. The process of figuring out the problem, the solution for the problem, is intelligence. The action is the solution. Once you figure out a strategy, once you figured out a solution to the problem, you have to actually bring forth that plan, execute. You must execute the strategy. That's the action. You don't just want to have random reactionary action. You just out there blowing in the wind and reacting to anything that come your way. Not having a vision for the future, which actually your vision for the future is preparation, is the strategy. You have to prepare that plan also. So it's a mental exercise to brainstorm, to constantly visualize your future and all the obstacles that's preventing you in the future. And then you have to have strategies based on that. How do I avoid danger? How do I actually avoid the trap set by my set up for my people by the United States government? which deemed you the enemy, public enemy number one. You know, that nobody in America has suffered the atrocities as the black people in America, because we're seen as the enemy, the threat to America, because they planned and figured this out. This is their intelligent action, and they say it's logical to annihilate black people. Me, as an individual, and also as a group of people, we have to say it's logical to prevent our annihilation from the United States government, who has declared war, declared you publicly as the enemy. Now, if you don't use intelligence, if you don't actually be precise with your action, if you don't really recognize the threats to your existence, the enemies to the enemies of your people, and the threats that exist to annihilate you, your days are numbered. One of the plans to annihilate black people in America is Planned Parenthood abortions, Margaret Sanger Negro Project, where they actually are successful convincing so-called black women to exterminate their children at a rate of at least 1,000 a day. Last time I checked, it was 1,400 abortions a day that so-called black women have engaged in for the last 60 years. At least 60 years. The black women has totally been neutralized mentally, because they don't realize that action that they're doing is something that has been planned by another group of people. Another group of women have determined your action, which will ensure that they will annihilate black people, which will serve their interests. You are serving the interest of your enemy. So black women is an agent of white supremacy, because they're engaging in annihilating black children, and they're engaging in perpetrating slander against the so-called black man. The so-called black woman is against the black man. Now, the so-called black man is the bearer of the seed, which is which is necessary to continue the so-called race of people. The so-called black man can place that seed in any woman on earth, and that could, ensure longevity, and that will ensure that we will exist in the future. We cannot depend on solely so-called a future with the black woman, who is an enemy, who is an agent, who has been compromised, who is working to annihilate us. So intelligent action is to avoid the so-called black woman, because they will abort your children. They will ensure that you will be destroyed economically. You will be in prison. They will encourage you to go do violence against another black man. They will encourage you to do things that will ruin your future, place you in prison, place you in a cemetery. So the black woman, as she is now, is detrimental to the future. She has been exterminating millions of babies for the interest of white supremacy. So we cannot continue that, we cannot continue that route as it is now. That's unintelligent. We're just behaving because we are lusting after the so-called black woman. But that lust is not intelligent, because that will lead to no future. You will have no future with the so-called black woman, because they have been brainwashed and compromised to participate in your destruction, your annihilation. That, for one, killing your children. 2, killing your dreams. 3, not supporting your businesses, your institutions, supporting your enemies' institutions, and the slander that they're perpetrating, perpetuating throughout the world, the negative stereotypes against the so-called black man. He's this and he's that. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. Even if that's true, why would you go publicly pronounce that? So the black woman has to be seen as the enemy. Also, the United States government has declared war against black people. So we have to actually recognize that the United States government is a hostile force. You cannot depend on your hostile enemy to assist in your elevation. This is why Joe Biden is putting illegal immigrant children in the forefront to get the resources that Trump laid out for you. Trump has something called the First Step Act, which allowed formerly incarcerated U.S. citizens to qualify for jobs and loans from the SBA, federal government jobs or whatever. Now he say illegal aliens that's on parole can also get that. They call them qualified aliens. This is what Joe Biden did. So they're taking advantage of a fresh act signed by Trump less than 3 years ago. He's already including formerly ineligible aliens to get the same benefits that black people with felonies, white people with felonies, could get the same opportunities that we just now are able to get because of Trump. He already, laid that out for everybody else. This U.S. government is the enemy of the so-called black people. So let me get into this right here. Intelligent action doesn't necessarily have to be physical activity, which it is physical activity because it's something that you're doing in the world. The intelligent aspect is abstract. That is mental. And that is something that you visualize. It's like, preparation. But action doesn't necessarily have to be something that you utilize your hands. What I'm trying to say is intelligent action can be teaching, because teaching and teaching a person to do a certain thing is an intelligent action, because that will actually prepare other people and make other people qualified to do things. If you're a builder, you could teach other people to build, and now you got more people that's building instead of you just being the only person that build. So teaching and learning is also intelligent action, because you're preparing for the future. Teaching is intelligent action because you're preparing people for the future. Teaching people to be sufficient in the future. Efficient, sufficient. Teaching people about economics, business, politics, history, culture, empowerment. Teaching people how to be self-sufficient. Teaching people how to actually save. Teaching people how to be successful. That's intelligent action. Because everything has to be taught. You got to be taught how to be a fool. Like the black women had to be taught how to hate their own children, how to hate their own community, how to hate the black man. They've been taught this, and they had to learn this. One aspect is to teach, the other aspect is to learn. You have to learn, that's action. So once you learn and once you teach, once you become qualified and prepared, that's when you go and actually do the action. If you're a mechanic, you're a politician, you have to learn how to speak, learn how to actually strategize. You got to have a deliberate plan. That you got to have a plan to actually execute. You got to have you just can't go out there execute. You just can't go out there random. You say, okay, and you got to know exactly what your goal is, and how do you determine when you actually accomplish your goal, and how do you get to the next step once you accomplish that goal. That's preparation, pre-planning. That's a plan of action. We all need a plan of action. Every day you strategize your plan of action. What am I going to do? How I'm going to get there? How long am I going to do it? And when do I end it? And how many breaks do I need? And how do I determine my success ratio? And how do I actually improve if I'm not actually successful? What went wrong? These are all things that takes intelligence. Intelligence is logic, reason. It's problem solving. It's mathematics. It's civilization. It's things like philosophy, science, nature. You know, you're looking at the weather. If it's freezing, you got to know you need something to keep you from dying of pneumonia. So you're not going to go out there without a coat. That's intelligent action. So every action that we do has to be intelligent. And the most basic action, the most basic intelligent action is self-preservation. Preserving your own life. You need food, clothes, shelter, and procreation. So that's the basic. If you don't have your life secure, insured for the next several generations, there's nothing else to talk about. You can't move to nothing. You got to figure out how do you sustain your own life, your own future. This is the responsibility for everybody. Your objective is your own self-preservation. You see, I know I keep talking about the black woman, but the so-called black women, they're not concerned about their own self-preservation. They're not concerned about the preservation of their people. They're concerned about other people's preservation, which is backwards thinking. That's not intelligent action. That's not intelligent thought. Your own survival is more important than another person's, because you're responsible for your own life and the life of your future offspring. Then once you get that straight, then you can worry about other people jumping over a border, all this type of stuff. People got to worry about being responsible for their own self and a future of their self. What's going to prevent you from making it to tomorrow? What's going to prevent you from making it to next year? And how do you neutralize these threats? How do you deal with these obstacles that's in your way? Now, when you think on that aspect, anything that's preventing you from getting to point A to point B, anything that's preventing you from making it to the next day is the enemy. And that also includes other black people, black men. If these black men are in the way of your success to making it to the next day, these black men is your enemy. Now, you could deal with your enemy many ways. You could either avoid the enemy, or you could either destroy the enemy. Or you could either try to have a stalemate with the enemy, fight the enemy, or somehow reason with the enemy. But that's the enemy. And if you don't deal with this enemy in some way, if you don't actually formulate a strategy around this enemy will prevent you from getting to the next day. You will not make it to the next day, because this thing that's stopping you, that's a potential threat to you, has to be dealt with. So it's you as the individual, and it's everything else. And everything else is either an ally or an enemy to your success. Everything else. Even your family, everything. This tree right there, this store, everything else is a potential enemy or ally. They're either helping me or they're not. And if they're not helping me, if they're in my way, I gotta figure out how do I walk around. I gotta walk around it. I gotta avoid the enemy that's trying to stop me. To avoid that situation. I don't have to necessarily fight the enemy. I could avoid the enemy, retreat from the enemy. There's many ways you could handle that situation, but whatever you do has to be intelligent, and it has to be strategized. It has to be a plan of action that you must execute. And you must have plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You have to have a plan in case the other plan don't work. You have another plan of action. Rules of engagement. What do you do? Now, when it comes to procreation, you must actually engage in these women, because if you're a man, you must figure out how do you actually communicate with these women, because to be a homosexual is not intelligent because you're not going to be able to procreate being a homosexual. And the same is for women. You cannot procreate with another woman. That's not intelligent action. So in order to ensure this future, you must procreate with the opposite sex. And then you must figure out, how do you actually get in this relationship? How do you start this relationship? And then once you start this relationship, how do you make this relationship success and long lasting in order to ensure that these children would be properly educated and prepared for the future? These are strategies. You see what I'm saying? These are all strategies that must be intelligently done. And this is intelligent action. Because without a mate, you will not have a future. And a problem with the so-called black community, and this is how the United States government has been successful. Black people have been shamed into thinking that you must only procreate with black people. And by them actually sabotaging the black woman's mind, the black man has been at a situation in which they're not really populating like they should, because they're afraid of the shame of procreating with a non-black woman. Because of the society's stereotypes, they ostracize you. They call you Uncle Toms and all these names. But if you're looking at it objectively, you must procreate with a woman in order to ensure the future. So the black woman, if the black woman is not actually conducive to that, they must be planned. You must look at plan B, plan C. Like, it's many women from many nations in the world that can be potential mates in order to ensure the future. The black woman can't be seen as the only option, because the black woman has been compromised with this destructive activity. They have been, they call it recruited. They are agents of white supremacy. And their main objective is to annihilate the children, to destroy the black community, to keep the black race down. This is what their everyday action is leading to: poverty, misery, death, and destruction. So they can't be seen as the only opportunity, because it's not going to be successful in that situation in which they're just going to these abortion clinics and they're trying to be these single mothers, and they're trying to actually denigrate, criticize, and degrade the so-called black people and the black man any chance they get. So they have to be a competition. They can't be seen as your only choice, because you're not gonna have too much success if that's your only choice. At the rate that they're killing off these kids, you gotta look at other options other than the black woman, especially the so-called American black woman. They have been committing mass genocide with the Caucasians against us, because the Caucasians run America, and they deemed, based on their observation and their analysis, think tanks, they have determined that the black people is the biggest threat to the United States national security, and they must do appropriate action to neutralize the threat. You know, they use logic. They say this is intelligent to do that. And me, I think it's intelligent for me to actually preserve my life and my future. So there you go. We got to do appropriate action to ensure our futures. That's about it. I think I talked too much. Yeah, that's about it.